Hello, Connie Learning Community. I'm coming to you from my house today. So you get my dog Frank in the background here. Hopefully he's just going to keep taking a nap. So today in class, we are doing a little bit with personality types and then also talking about strengths. So you just completed an activity with your peer mentors about understanding kind of the different personality types with that assessment that we had you complete as part of your personal data sheet. It's helpful to know that information. So this isn't just something that we have you do randomly. One of the ways, once you kind of know a little bit more about yourself, your personality type, and your strengths, you can use that when you're working with groups. You can use that in future jobs. You can use that to kind of advocate for roles that you might want to have, or when you're working with a team, you get to know what the other people on your team are like, and can make decisions based on that. So, for example, when I look at my personality type, I am primarily extroverted. So I do like being in big groups of people, interacting with others. That's made the pandemic a little bit tough for me. Um, but one way that I've used that at work is when we have big events to go to. So like recruitment events or, um, in-person types of things where I might be setting up a booth for the department. I will usually volunteer to go to those things as opposed to sending some other people from my team, just because I have more of that extroverted side where some of the people I work with might be a little bit more introverted and prefer interacting in more of a one-to-one space as opposed to that kind of large group space. So it is helpful to know what your preferences are so that you can kind of tailor your job or tailor your role in a team based on that. So the next thing that we are going to talk about is strengths. And you all took the strengths assessment. I do have a video here that we're going to play with Jen Leptine. She is the person who runs all university learning communities at Iowa State. So she's kind of the person in charge of learning communities. She has done a lot with strengths. She's very good with it, and I think that you'll really enjoy this. And then we have some in-person activities that you'll do with your peer mentor related to your strengths. So where the personality type was more of like, where do you fall on the spectrum? Strengths are actually way more personal to you. That assessment that you did that I know took a little bit of time, it gives you your top 5 strengths breakdown. So again, when I'm working with my team, I like to know what my strengths are and what my team's strengths are so that we can work together to collaborate and utilize everyone to the best of their ability. So I'll share mine with you just so that you can see. And mine's going to maybe look a little bit different from yours, just because I've done like the full assessment. I had to pay a bit more. I've done the full assessment where I can see all 34 in order, as opposed to just having my top 5. So, okay, so looking at my top 5. So I am learner, analytical, focus, significance, and responsibility. So when I look at those, I've got my top 2 are in strategic thinking. I've got 2 here in executing, and then 1 in influencing. As an example of how we might use this in a group or when you're working with other people, there's a person I work with who the entire top 5 are in strategic thinking, which is great. I know what that person's strengths are. If there is a problem that we're trying to solve, I know that I can go to him and he might even write some kind of algorithm to figure out, how to solve this problem. He's going to be very good at identifying the problem, thinking about solutions. But when it comes to putting those things into practice, he likes to, come to me because I have a little bit more on the executing side. So if we are trying to solve a problem together, we can kind of play off of each other's strengths when it comes to what's the solution going to be, and then how do we go about doing it. So that's just kind of one small example of using strengths in the workplace and knowing what you're good at and what you might want to go to other people with. So I'm going to show you kind of another layout of this. Again, mine's going to look a little bit different from yours because I have all 34. But this is, and hopefully you can see this. Okay, I'll try to zoom in a little bit. These are my top strengths and kind of where they fall in those domains. So like I said, I've got my highest ones are here in strategic thinking. I've got quite a bit here in executing, a bit here in influencing. I'm really competitive. that type of thing. And relationship building is not my strong suit. So I know that may seem a little bit weird for an academic advisor to not have a lot of strengths in relationship building. I guess one thing that I would point out about this is just because they're not in my top strengths doesn't mean I'm incapable of doing that. It just means that that's not the thing that comes the most naturally to me. And again, if I'm working with my team, depending on what we're doing or what the needs are, I know who on my team has more strengths in areas where I might be lacking them. So we can work together really well that way. So this is just kind of nice to see where, where you might be the best, where you might have to work a little bit harder. And I guess when it comes back to that advising thing, I know that when it comes to schedules and all the this Tetris that we have to play in putting schedules together, I think it's fine that most of my strengths are in executing and strategic thinking, because that's what I end up doing quite a bit. And hopefully if you've interacted with me one-on-one, I have some relationship building capabilities. So what you are going to do next, let's see if I can stop sharing my screen here. Let me zoom back out so it doesn't mess things up. Okay, so what we are going to do next is have you actually watch that video with Jen Leptine, just to kind of dive a little bit more into why we're talking about strengths. And then we'll start to take a closer look at your strengths individually, start to think about ways that you may have seen your strengths play out, whether in academics, in previous work situations, or anytime that you've done group work, or things like that, where you might have an example of how you've used your strengths. And then you'll be interacting with each other a little bit to try to find out what are the strengths of the people in your group. I think it's a good way to get to know yourselves a little bit better and to get to know your classmates a little bit better. So now I will turn it over to Jen.
I'm Jen Leptine. I've been working with learning communities for about 15 years now. This is my 15th year going in. And I received all my degrees at Iowa State University, and so I'm a lifelong Cyclone. And I wanted to begin by sharing my strengths, which are individualization, harmony, learner, relator, and responsibility. And so what I'm here to do today is walk you through just an introduction to the strengths philosophy and tell you a little bit about why we find importance in knowing our strengths, and talk a little bit about how to prepare to take the assessment. And then when we come back for part 2, we'll talk about how to interpret your results and talk about the strengths in the workplace and how that will help you with the future employment. So I want to begin by asking you to take out a piece of paper and a pen and sign your name 3 times. And imagine that you're signing a very important check. Maybe you got a lotto check for $2 million and you want to make sure that they can read your name. So sign your name 3 times. Next, I want you to sign your name by using your opposite hand. So the results of this writing challenge, when doing this, often people will find it very easy and very little effort needs to be put into actually signing your name with your dominant hand. However, when people are asked to switch their hand and use the non-dominant, they tend to struggle. They have to really think hard about what they're doing. And as you can see, as evidenced by my example on the screen, your handwriting tends to look pretty bad when you're using the non-dominant hand. And the reason why I like this exercise to initiate a conversation around strengths is because it really demonstrates how the things that we do naturally and have talent for, we don't have to really think about. It comes quite easily to us, requires less time and effort. And things that we do not ordinarily practice or have a lot of skill around as a natural tendency tends to require a lot more effort and a lot more time in accomplishing those activities. So the strengths philosophy, just to give you a basis for why this is important in the work that we do, it was a positive psychology movement that was developed by Don Clifton. He wanted to really describe human behavior in the positive way. A lot of psychology was focused around what makes people different and difficult or abnormalities, and this was a way to really focus on what makes good in the world and how we behave and the reasons why we do things the way that we do. And so one of the things that's important is to know that you are receiving your top 5 strengths. However, they're considered talents at this stage because you're just now identifying what those natural skills and talents are. And it's not until you begin to really focus on those strengths and develop them that you start to see that you have the potential to make them greater. And so strength is actually your natural way of thinking and feeling and behaving, and then you have the opportunity to practice that strength, build skill around that strength, and knowledge of using that strength over time in order to maximize the results of what your strengths look like on a day-to-day basis. When lived in a healthy way, your strengths really have the opportunity to build upon themselves and help you to get the work done that you need to do on a day-to-day basis. So some facts about strengths that I wanted to share is that this is a worldwide movement. It happens everywhere. It's not just exclusive to the United States. Over 15 million people have taken the assessment in the many years that it's been around, and it began in the 1960s. An average of 1,500 people take this assessment a day. And what's exciting to me is that the chance of someone having the exact same strengths as you in the exact same order is 1 in 33.4 million. So you are 1 in 33 million as an individual. There are over 120 ways to arrange a set of 5 strengths, and there are over 278,000 different combinations of a top 5. What's important to know is a little bit about your strengths over time. I'm often given the question, will my strengths change? I'm 20 years old right now. Are they going to look different when I'm 30? And so it is 85% likely that your strengths, your top 8, will remain unchanged over your life course. And of the 15% that do change, it's usually due to a major shift in a person's life. So most commonly, that major shift is actually if a person loses a job for more than a year. And as you can imagine, self-esteem and self-confidence tends to deplete when you've been out of a job for over a year. Something to note is many of the college students at Iowa State tend to be in that 20-year-old age range. And you, if you are in that age range, are living about 12 strengths on a day-to-day basis. By the time you're in your 40s, you're living about 8. And then by the time you're in your 60s, you're living about 3 strengths every day. And so we fine-tune and focus these skills over the life course. It's very important to know that, that your strengths will continue to develop, and this comes from experiences, the work that you do, and the knowledge that you gain over your lifespan. And then finally, why I find it really important to understand your strengths is it helps you maximize your talent. So you'll see that there's an application in your academic world and knowing yourself, the career that you're planning to do, knowing your strengths can impact that. And then also it leads to greater personal happiness and well-being because you feel more confident in your abilities. So the special focus on strengths, as I mentioned, is to really help you understand your strengths and talents. I think it's important to identify this early so you have the ability to not only better understand your own self, but understand the group dynamics of the people that you work with. So I can identify a person's strengths and work with that and know that it's not necessarily a detriment, it's just the way that they like to get work done. It also allows us to build effective working teams and knowing the type of people that we can bring together with diverse ideas and diverse ways of thinking. And we can build a stronger, more efficient work team. And then it also helps us develop our leadership skills. So one thing that I do like to mention here is a difference in the way that people understand their strengths and work with them. There was a longitudinal study done back in the 1970s of high schoolers, and there was a control group of high schoolers that didn't know their strengths and an experimental group that did learn their strengths. And they checked back after many years of these folks getting out into the working world, and those who knew their strengths back in high school reported 3 times better health benefits from those who didn't know their strengths. We also saw that wealth was a big piece of the puzzle, and $12,000 a year average income for those who knew their strengths, which of course accumulates over time and creates a much stronger level of wealth across the population. So we see that this is an important feature in knowing your strengths. So before you embark on the test, one of the things that I wanted to make clear to everyone is that you are going to receive a series of 177 paired statements. It seems like a lot, but it's important to expect that you should be choosing the statement to which you feel strongest about or feel that identifies you the best. There are 5-point scales with each of the questions. I would encourage you to go with your gut instinct on this. Don't spend a lot of time focusing around how you might answer it in a different domain or a different area of your life. Go with that initial instinct. Also, it's important to eliminate distractions. Because the survey is set up on a 20-second question timer, people continue to move on and on through the assessment, whether they're taking and answering the questions or not. So it's very, very important to turn off your phone, make sure and turn off notifications, keep social media out of your face, don't watch TV while you're trying to do this, but really focus on that assessment. And once you get done, we will happily get back together again and talk about your results.